What screams I'm too immature to date someone? Inability or unwillingness to look at problem or issue through your partner's perspective. What was the creepiest thing you witnessed that made you believe in supernatural stuff? I was riding my bicycle down a narrow path. Maybe 30 meters in front of me was an elderly woman also on a bike. I was going fast and catching up to her quickly. I was a couple of meters from passing her when the path took a right turn and she was out of my sight for a second. I should have been right behind her after I too had taken the right turn. So imagine my surprise when she had just vanished. There was an open field to the left, a highly fenced off area with no gates to the right and one straight road ahead of us. No trace of her anywhere. I know the area well and there is no way she could have been hidden anywhere. This woman just went poof and it puzzles me to this day. That was your previous lap and you're doing a worse time. What common joke would you retire from the human race if you had the chance? Working outside in the heat for hours just to hear the homeowner come outside and say, "Having fun yet?" People who have survived school shootings, what was it like? Serious. Coming up on the 9th anniversary of a shooting that took place at my high school when I was a senior, a student that had been suspended earlier in the day returned to the school with his dad's handgun, went into the office of the vice principal that had suspended him and opened fire. He struck and killed the vice principal and critically injured the head principal who was responding to the sound of gunfire. The student fled the school and took his own life in a parking lot not far from the campus. I was in class at the time and an announcement came over the intercom that we were in a code red lockdown. Some students/teachers say they remember the announcement saying that it was not a drill, but I'm not really certain if that was included or not. My class locked the door, turned off the lights, and huddled in a corner, but I don't remember a feeling of fear or that the room was tense. We had had a couple of code yellows earlier in the year for small fights in the hallways and code yellow/red drills weren't uncommon. So the class felt more inconvenienced by the fact that we were just about to break for our lunch when the announcement was made than anything else. As we sat for longer without any update, a realization definitely began to come over the class that something more serious had happened, and we were all on our phones looking to get some idea of what was going on. This was before Twitter was super popular and there was a ton of confusion and misinformation going around from texts that people were getting from other students in the building and from family/friends who were now watching the story develop on the news. We eventually received word that the school was going to be taken out of the code red and students/faculty would be released room by room and escorted out of the building by an armed police officer. We waited what felt like hours. We'd missed lunch and the room was restless and finally received the knock on our door to indicate we were leaving. The officer walked us out the back of the school and through a parking lot that led to a church that neighbored the school. I met up with my parents and went home to watch my school on the news. Later that evening I went to dinner with some friends to just spend time with one another, and we got word while we were there that our vice principal had passed from her injuries. We finished our meal in silence, paid our check, and went to the school for a candlelight vigil. There had to have been 400 plus people with candles and homemade signs and people just took turns praying and speaking to the crowd. Nothing planned or officially organized, just an opportunity for people to hurt together. It sounds cliche when people say I never thought it would happen here, but that really is the only response that makes sense after something like that happens. I remember an intense sadness in the days that followed and cried more than I ever had before or since. When I think back about that day, I like to remember the kindness of the community at the candlelight vigil and the posters of support from neighboring schools that lined the main hallway of the building for the next month. With the 2010s coming to a close, what has aged like milk? Bill Cosby's legacy. If you had to torture someone in the most harmless way imaginable, how would you do it? Hide a smoke detector with a dying battery in their attic. Flight attendants, pilots, or other airline crew, has there ever been a time on a flight where you were genuinely scared or nervous about the flight? And if so, what happened/what did you do? My dad is a captain at American Airlines. won't tell me his worst flight because he doesn't want to freak me out. Fair. As someone who has flown since before I can even remember, my worst was flying to Indianapolis from Orlando. It was July, so basically, that entire corridor was poppin' with thunderstorms. We got put in a holding pattern over Indy for 2 hours and diverted to Louisville for fuel. Normal enough. What's not normal is that in the half hour it takes to fly to Ovalville from Indy, a line of thunderstorms had popped up Ovalville. We are coming in for approach and I can see the way the clouds look outside the plane. I'm a meteorology nerd and knew they meant wind shear in the area was starting to form. As we came into land, a gust of wind hit our plane, almost knocking us sideways. Pilot pulled the throttle back so hard for a missed approach. So cool, now we were back up in the thunderstorm filled sky. We are hitting severe turbulence at this point and people are praying, holding hands and crying. The captain brings us back around and absolutely plows it into the ground and basically said fuck your wind shear. I've never been so happy to get on the ground. Edit. The pilot did not pull the throttle back, he actually pushed that shit through the floor. I was corrected by pilots in the replies. Gamers of Reddit, what are some good quotes from video games? Before you came along, nobody ever tried to kill me, or feed me to birds, or turn me into a potato GLaDOS. What was the dumbest thing you've ever been asked by a customer? I used to work at the UPS store in high school. Our last pickup was at 7 o'clock and we closed at 8 p.m. Since we had private information and people's personal mailboxes in the store, security was a big deal. It was 8:30. Our tills were counted down, the alarm was set, our copiers, fax machine, and computers were shut down. Our lights were off, and we had closed and locked a ginormous red gate that separated the entrance from the rest of the store. Some woman ran up to the door, and like some demon in a horror movie, she hurled herself against the glass and screeched like a banshee. Keep in mind, we are very obviously closed with a sign saying we are closed, no lights on, and a giant red gate drawn down over the store. She began pounding on the glass and frantically yelling at us. My coworker worried something was wrong, like maybe she was being chased and needed help. He carefully opened the door just a crack to ask what was wrong. She immediately tried to wedge her hands and head in the crack and asked to yell open. We informed her that we obviously weren't. Her logic was, well, you opened the door so now you have to help me. She began wailing and crying that she had to mail a package. We explained that even if we were open, our last pickup was an hour and a half ago and we couldn't even mail it until tomorrow. She protested and protested, and we eventually got the door shut and locked. So we just stood there awkwardly in the dark, hoping she would leave. She kept pounding on the glass and saying, I know you're open. As we debated what to do and if we should call the cops, this lady pulled out her cell phone and called the cops herself. The cops arrived. We explained the situation, and the woman accused us of lying, despite the sign on the door saying we closed an hour ago at this point. Then, in front of the officer and on security camera, the woman launched herself at my coworker and hit him in the face. She immediately jumped back and began fake crying that he had assaulted her. We were dumbfounded. She ended up getting arrested and my coworker pressed charges. So the stupidest question I got was, are you open? What is an animal fact that not everyone knows but they should? Hedgehogs are known as the gardener's friend. This is because they will eat slugs, beetles, caterpillars, etc. and do no harm, only good. What happened when the kind/quiet person snapped? Kicked the shit out of half our barracks. Was then tased by MPs and arrested. Edit. I'm off to have a beer. To all the peeps that hit me up, positive or negative, cheers cunts. If you had to permanently move to another country, where would you move, and why? I'm from Kentucky, and have spent the past 7 years in Japan. I moved here for a job, after doing a study abroad here, and slowly what I thought would be a 1-year life experience, has turned into a 2, 3, 4 and now 7 years living abroad. I love it here, and I love my friends here. I do miss some things from home, but I've come to realize that I'm no longer 100% American, and I'm not Japanese either. I'm an expat, so I no longer fit in with my 100% American friends/family. It is kind of hard to explain, but I have to say, I'd do it all again if I could. When learning a second language, when did it click for you? When I had to stop thinking about translating. Eventually you get to a point where you're hearing the words and not needing to literally translate it to your native tongue. Cat owners of Reddit, what is the weirdest thing your cat has done? My cat carries around socks in her mouth and makes this loud yet muffled yowling noise. It's so freaking cute, I love her so much. What is the best comeback to go to hell and give you home field advantage? I think not.